Her husband dropped her suitcase on the sidewalk at 11:43 p.m. in front of their neighbors. 8 months pregnant, no coat, no phone, no wallet, just a belly full of his child and a plastic bag with 3 maternity dresses she had bought with her own $47. He locked the door, turned off the porch light, and went back to the woman sitting on the couch. She walked 9 blocks in the rain before she found a door with a light still on. She knocked. She did not know who lived behind it, but the person behind that door knew exactly who she was. The rain hit the pavement on Beatty's Ford Road in Charlotte, North Carolina, like gravel thrown from a rooftop. It was the kind of rain that soaked through clothes in 30 seconds, the kind that made car tires hiss on the asphalt and turned gutters into rivers. Abeni Ndukwe stood on that porch with water running down her face and her belly pressing hard against the fabric of a dress that was too thin for October. Her feet were bare, her toes were numb. She knocked again, harder this time. The door opened. A woman in her late 60s stood there in a housecoat and slippers. Her name was Willa Mae Saunders. She had silver hair pulled tight into a bun at the back of her head, deep brown skin, and hands that looked like they had never stopped working. She looked at Abeni's belly first, then at her bare feet on the cold concrete, then at the plastic bag hanging from her right hand. "Come in," Willa Mae said. She did not ask a single question. She sat Abeni down at the kitchen table. She put a towel around her shoulders and another one over her feet. She boiled water on a stove that had a crack in the back burner and set a mug of ginger tea in front of her. Then she sat across from her and waited. The clock on the wall said 12:07 a.m. Abeni could not stop shaking, not from the cold, from everything that had led to this porch. Her husband, Dexter Osei, had spent 14 months planning this night. She just did not know it until the suitcase hit the sidewalk. Dexter was a senior property manager for a commercial real estate group called Vanguard Crown Holdings based in uptown Charlotte. He managed 11 buildings across 3 zip codes. He earned $188,000 a year. He drove a black Audi Q7 with leather seats and tinted windows. He wore tailored suits on Mondays and Thursdays and golf shirts with the collar popped on Saturdays at the Quail Hollow Club. He had a firm handshake and a voice that made people feel like they were being let into a secret. And for the last 3 years, he had been telling everyone, his colleagues, his mother, his golf partners, even the barber on Central Avenue, that his wife contributed nothing to their life. That was the lie he had built everything on. And tonight, he had finally acted on it. What Dexter did not know was that Willa Mae Saunders had worked as a housekeeper for Vanguard Crown Holdings for 19 years. She cleaned the floors and restrooms of the very buildings Dexter managed. She had seen him in the hallways hundreds of times. She had heard him on the phone with his wife, his voice flat and cold, telling her not to call during business hours. She had watched him charm clients in the lobby, dismiss assistants with a wave, and talk about his wife to other men like she was a coat he had outgrown. But that was not why Willa Mae opened the door tonight. She opened it because she recognized Abeni's face, not from the hallways, from a photograph that had been taped to the inside of a locker in the basement of Building 7 on North Tryon Street, a locker that had belonged to a woman named Chidinma Ndukwe, Abeni's grandmother. Chidinma had worked as a cook at the same company 31 years before Willa Mae arrived. She had cooked meals for board meetings, holiday lunches, Friday staff dinners, and every company event that required food that people would remember. She had done it for 9 years, and she had left behind something in that locker when she moved back to Silver Spring, Maryland, something that no one had touched since. Abeni did not know any of this. She only knew that her grandmother had once worked somewhere in Charlotte before moving back to Maryland, where Abeni grew up in a small apartment with yellow curtains and the smell of cayenne always in the air. Chidinma had taught Abeni how to cook before she died. West African spice blends passed down from her own mother. Slow braised stews that took 4 hours and could not be rushed. Ground nut soup with smoked turkey and a pinch of something sweet that nobody could name. Jollof rice that made grown men close their eyes and go quiet. Abeni had learned every recipe by standing next to Chidinma in the kitchen from the age of 7 to the age of 16. She learned by watching, by tasting, by getting her knuckles tapped when she added too much salt. She learned the way Chidinma moved, never rushing, never measuring twice, always knowing when the oil was at the right temperature by the sound it made when the onion touched it. Then Chidinma passed, January 14th, 2013. A stroke in the kitchen. She was 66 years old, and Abeni stopped cooking, not because she forgot how, because the kitchen reminded her of a woman she could not talk about without her chest tightening and her hands going still. The skill was still inside her hands. She had buried it the way you bury a thing that hurts too much to hold. Willamay poured more tea. She watched this young woman shaking at her table and said nothing about what she knew. Not yet. The timing was not right. She only asked one question. When is the baby due? 5 weeks, Abeni said. Willamay nodded. She stood up slowly. She walked to the hallway closet and pulled out a clean nightgown that smelled like lavender fabric softener, a pair of thick wool socks, and a heavy blanket. She handed them to Abeni and pointed down the hall. The room at the end of the hall has a bed. You sleep there tonight. We talk in the morning. Abeni opened her mouth to say something, to thank her, to explain, to apologize for arriving like a ghost on a stranger's porch at midnight. Willamay raised one hand. The hand was firm. The eyes were soft. Tomorrow. That night, Abeni slept for the first time in 6 days. She did not dream. She did not wake up at 3 a.m. to the sound of Dexter standing in the doorway, watching her in the dark the way he had started doing 3 months ago. She did not hear the sound of him locking the bedroom door from the outside, a habit he had picked up in August when he said it was for security. She just slept, deep and full and heavy. What she did not know was that Willamay sat in the kitchen until 2 a.m., with the light above the stove still on. She made one phone call. It was to a woman named Pauline Achebe, who worked in the records department at Vanguard Crown Holdings. Pauline had worked there for 11 years. She knew where every file was. She knew which ones had been moved, which ones had been buried, and which ones had signatures that did not match. Willamay asked her one question. Pauline's answer changed the direction of everything that followed. If this story is hitting you the way I think it is, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. The next morning, Abeni sat at the kitchen table with sunlight coming through the window and told Willamay everything. She told her that she and Dexter had been married for 7 years, that when they first got married they had $11,400 between them in a joint account at a Wells Fargo on Independence Boulevard, that she had worked as an office manager at a dental practice on Sardis Road for 3 years while he built his career at Vanguard Crown, that she had paid the rent on their first apartment on Remount Road, $1,350 a month, for 26 straight months, while his salary caught up, that she had typed his quarterly reports for 2 years because he said he could not afford an assistant, that she had cooked dinner for his clients at their home 43 times in the last 3 years alone, measuring, shopping, prepping, cooking, serving, cleaning, smiling, that she had hosted every holiday event since 2020, including a Christmas party for 27 people that she planned, decorated, catered, and cleaned up after while 7 months pregnant. She told her that Dexter had put every property, every account, and every vehicle in his name alone, that she had asked him twice to add her name to the mortgage on the house on Tuckasegee Road, and both times he had said, "When the time is right." That when she got pregnant, he told her to quit her job because it was the right thing for the family. She did, and the moment she had no income of her own, he started calling her a burden, not loudly, not in arguments, in passing, at dinner, on the phone to his mother with Abaney standing in the next room. She told her that 3 months ago Dexter brought a woman named Cassandra Mills into their home on a Sunday afternoon. He introduced her as a colleague from the Southeast Division, but Cassandra came back again and again, every Wednesday evening, then every Tuesday and Wednesday, then entire weekends. Her perfume, vanilla and something sharp, started showing up on the pillows, on the couch, on the bathroom towels. Abaney found a receipt in his jacket for a necklace she never received. $4,200 from a jeweler on South Boulevard. When she asked about it, Dexter told her she was paranoid and hormonal, and that pregnancy was making her irrational. 2 weeks later, she saw Cassandra wearing it at a brunch Dexter hosted at their home. Cassandra touched the pendant while looking directly at Abaney. She smiled. She told her that last night at 11:15 p.m., Dexter sat her down at the kitchen table and said 5 words, "This is not your home." He had the locks changed at 9 a.m. that morning while Abaney was at her prenatal appointment. She did not know until she came back and her key did not work. Her name was not on the deed. Her name was not on the lease. Her name was not on the car title. He had already moved $34,000 from their joint savings into a personal account at a different bank. He handed her the suitcase, a gray Samsonite she had bought for their honeymoon in Savannah, and said she had 10 minutes to pack whatever fit inside. When she asked where she was supposed to go, 8 months pregnant, no phone, no car, no family in Charlotte, he said, "That is not my problem." Cassandra was sitting on the couch when Abaney walked past. She did not look up from her phone. Willa May listened to every word without moving. She did not interrupt. She did not shake her head. She did not say, "Lord have mercy," or "That man is evil," or anything that would have made Abaney feel pitied. When Abaney finished, the kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of the refrigerator humming. Then Willa May stood up. She walked to the back bedroom. She came back carrying a shoebox with a rubber band around it. She set it on the table and pulled off the rubber band. Inside were 12 envelopes, each one sealed with clear tape that had yellowed with age. Each one labeled in handwriting that was faded but still perfectly clear. The handwriting said, "Chidinma Ndukwe, personal recipes, not for sale." Abaney stopped breathing. "Your grandmother worked at the same company your husband manages now," Willa May said. "She was the best cook that building ever had." 19 years after she left, people still talked about her jollof rice at the holiday party. She left these behind in her locker in the basement when she went back to Maryland. Nobody cleaned out that locker for decades. I found them 6 years ago when they finally cleared the basement for renovation. I kept them because the handwriting was too beautiful to throw away. I did not know who they belonged to, not until I saw your picture in that locker, and not until I saw your face last night, standing on my porch in the rain. Abaney opened the first envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a recipe card written in her grandmother's hand on a piece of cardstock that had gone soft with time. Groundnut soup, Chidinma's way. The measurements were exact. The instructions were detailed. The margins had small notes in pencil. More ginger in winter, less tomato when the paste is strong. Always taste before the 3rd hour. Never rush the peanuts. She opened the second envelope. Jollof rice, wedding style. The notes in the margin said, "The burnt bottom is not a mistake. It is the prize." Then the third, egusi stew for celebrations. Then the fourth, pepper soup for healing. The fifth, Suya Spice Blend, Chidinma's Secret. The 6th, Chin Chin, Christmas Only. The 7th through the 11th. Each one a complete recipe, each one with her grandmother's notes in the margins, each one smelling faintly of palm oil and dried thyme and the kind of kitchen that never goes cold. Abeni held the 12th envelope and could not open it. Her hands were shaking too hard. Willa May reached across the table and opened it for her. Inside was not a recipe. It was a letter. It said, "To whoever finds these, I am Chidinma Ndukwe. I cooked for this company for 9 years. I fed their board members, their partners, their holiday guests. I was never paid what I was worth, but I gave them my best because that is what my mother taught me. These recipes are my life's work. They are not for sale. They are not for anyone who did not earn them. If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do. If not, let them feed whoever is hungry. That is enough." Abeni put her forehead on the table and cried. Not the kind of crying that comes from sadness, the kind that comes from being found. It was the first time she had cried in 3 years. She had stopped crying the day Dexter told her that crying was manipulation. Willa May let her cry. She did not touch her. She did not speak. She sat with her hands folded on the table and waited until the crying slowed and then stopped. Then she said something that Abeni would carry for the rest of her life. "Your grandmother left you an inheritance, not money. Something better. She left you a skill that nobody can take from you, a name that nobody can erase, and 12 recipes that can build whatever you need them to build. The only question is whether you are ready to use them." Over the next 4 weeks, something shifted inside that small house on Beatty's Ford Road. Abeni started cooking again, not because she wanted to, not because she was healed, because her hands remembered before her heart was ready. She would stand at the stove and her fingers would reach for the cayenne at the exact moment the recipe required it. She would stir the pot counterclockwise the way Chidinma stirred. She would lift the spoon and blow on it and taste with her eyes closed, the way her grandmother did every single time. She made the groundnut soup first. She stood at the stove for 3 hours. Her feet ached. Her back pulled tight across her lower spine. The baby kicked twice during the 2nd hour, hard enough that she had to grip the counter, but she did not stop. The smell filled the kitchen, peanuts and tomato and smoked turkey and cayenne, and something underneath that had no name, something that came from the way Chidinma layered the spices in a specific order that no cookbook had ever printed. It was not a recipe anyone could copy from a card. It was a rhythm, and Abeni's hands still knew it. Willa May walked in from the living room without being asked. She sat down at the table. Abeni placed a bowl in front of her. The soup was thick and golden with a thin layer of red oil floating on top. Willa May took 1 spoonful. She closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. Her breathing slowed. She did not say a word for 4 full minutes. Then she opened her eyes, set the spoon down, and said, "That is not food. That is a testimony." Abeni made the jollof rice the next day, then the pepper soup, then the agusi stew. Each dish came out of her hands like it had been waiting for permission. Each one tasted like Chidinma was standing behind her, adjusting the flame, tapping her wrist when she stirred too fast. Each one left the kitchen smelling like a place people wanted to stay. What Abeni did not know yet was that each meal she cooked was building something that could not be taken away. Not by Dexter, not by any court, not by anyone. Word spread the way things spread in neighborhoods where people still talk to each other across fences. Willa May's next-door neighbor, a retired teacher named Opal Freeman, came by the next day. She tasted the jollof rice. She called her sister Rochelle. Rochelle called her prayer group at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. The prayer group told the choir told the deacons. Within 10 days, Abeni was cooking 3 meals a week out of Willa May's kitchen for paying customers. $15 a plate, cash only, pickup between 5 and 7 p.m. The orders kept coming. 22 plates the first week, 37 the second week, 51 the third week, 68 the fourth week. Abeni cooked every one of them standing at Willamay's stove, with Chidinma's recipe cards taped to the cabinet above her head. She cooked with Chidinma's standard. Nothing leaves this kitchen unless it is the best thing that person will eat this month. She did not advertise. She did not post on social media. She did not have a phone to post from. Willa May let her use the landline for orders. Opal Freeman spread the word at Mount Moriah Baptist on Sunday mornings. By the end of the fourth week, Abeni had made $3,740 in cash. She folded every single dollar bill and put it in the same shoebox that had held her grandmother's recipes. She was 36 days from her due date. She had no insurance, no car, no legal representation, no address of her own. But she had $3,740, 12 recipes, and a kitchen that Willa May refused to charge her a single dollar of rent for. She also had something Dexter did not know about, something he had thrown into the suitcase by accident when he packed her things in those 10 furious minutes. A manila folder, brown, unmarked, tucked between 2 maternity dresses at the bottom of the bag. Inside that folder was every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement, and every canceled check she had saved for 7 years. It was her record, her proof, her testimony in paper, grocery receipts for 43 client dinners she had shopped for, prepared, and served. $8,917 total, all paid from her personal checking account at Bank of America. Utility payments for 26 months when Dexter's salary was still growing and the bills came faster than his paychecks. $14,300. Car insurance payments she made on the Audi Q7 that he now drove alone past the house she had been thrown out of. $6,200 over 4 years. 3 lump sum payments toward his student loans from Howard University before the refinance went through. $4,500. The $2,100 security deposit she put down on their first apartment on Remount Road with money she had saved from her dental office job. Her W-2 forms from the dental practice showing $41,000 a year for 3 consecutive years. $123,000 she earned while he built his career and told people he did it alone. Line by line, dollar by dollar, year by year. Every contribution she made had a date, an amount, and a paper trail. She had kept it all because Chidinma once told her, "Always keep your receipts, not for taxes, for truth." Dexter had called her a burden. The folder said otherwise. He had not meant to give it to her. He had shoved it into the suitcase with her dresses because he did not know what it was. He had never opened it. He had never looked at a single page. In 14 months of planning her removal from his life, moving money, changing locks, rehearsing his story, he had never once looked at the evidence of everything she had given him. That folder was about to cost him more than he could imagine. 3 weeks before her due date, something happened that almost broke everything apart. Abeni went to Atrium Health Mercy Hospital on Vale Avenue for a prenatal checkup. She had no insurance. She had no ID. Dexter had kept her driver's license in the fireproof safe at home, and she had not thought to ask for it during those 10 minutes. She had no proof of address. The intake nurse, a young woman with a clipboard and no patience for explanations, told her she could not be seen without valid identification and insurance information. Abeni did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She sat down in a plastic chair in the waiting room with her hands on her belly and waited. She did not know what she was waiting for. She just sat there because she had nowhere else to go. 40 minutes passed. Other patients came and went. A man with a broken wrist, a child with a fever, a woman with chest pains who was wheeled past in a chair. Nobody looked at Abeni. Then a hospital social worker named Yolanda Price walked through the waiting room at 3:17 p.m. on her way to a staff meeting. She saw a pregnant woman sitting alone with no purse, no phone, no coat, and no shoes, wearing house slippers that were 2 sizes too big. She stopped. "Are you waiting for someone?" Yolanda asked. "I am waiting to be seen," Abeni said, "but I do not have my identification." Yolanda sat down next to her. She asked her name. She asked how far along she was. She asked her situation. And when Abeni told her, calmly, without tears, without performance, without raising her voice, Yolanda stood up and made 2 phone calls from the hallway. The first was to the hospital's patient advocacy office. Within 20 minutes, Abeni was in an examination room. The second call was to a family law attorney named Denise Okafor Banks, who worked with a domestic displacement nonprofit called Second Door Charlotte. Denise had handled 47 cases like Abeni's in the last 3 years. She knew exactly what this was. She knew exactly what to file. Within 72 hours, Denise Okafor Banks had filed 3 motions with the Mecklenburg County Family Court: a petition for emergency spousal support, a request for a temporary restraining order based on financial abuse and unlawful lockout during pregnancy, and a motion to freeze all joint marital assets that Dexter had transferred into personal accounts. But Dexter had not been sitting still. He had his own attorney, a man named Lawrence Kemp from a firm on South Tryon Street. Kemp had filed a counterpetition within 48 hours. He claimed Abeni had left the marital home voluntarily. He claimed she had exhibited erratic and emotionally unstable behavior throughout the pregnancy. He claimed she had refused to contribute to the household for over a year and had become financially dependent by choice. His attorney attached a signed statement from Cassandra Mills. The statement said that Cassandra had been present on the night in question and that Abeni had packed her belongings calmly and left the marital home of her own free will. It said Abeni had not been forced. It said she had not been locked out. It said she had simply chosen to leave. For 3 days, it looked like it might work. Dexter's version was clean. It was organized. It had a witness signature, and Abeni's version had no documentation, no police report, no video, no recording, no text messages from a phone she no longer had. The neighbor across the street from the house on Tuckasegee Road, a retired postal worker named Gerald Hayes, had seen Dexter drop the suitcase on the sidewalk that night. He had been on his porch. He had watched the whole thing. But Gerald was 74 years old. He did not want to get involved. He told his wife he had not seen anything. He locked his front door and went to bed. For 3 days, Abeni sat in Willa Mae's kitchen and felt something she had not felt since the night on the sidewalk. She felt invisible again, not seen, not believed, not counted. The system that was supposed to protect her was listening to the man who threw her out. His lie was neat. Her truth was messy. And she knew from experience that the world almost always chose neat over messy. She thought about giving up. Not the cooking, not the baby, the fight. She thought about letting Dexter have the story he had written. She thought about disappearing the way he wanted her to. Quietly, completely, without leaving a mark. But then she looked at the shoebox on the kitchen table, the one with Chidinma's recipes, the one with the letter that said, "If my family ever needs them, they will know what to do." She did not give up. She set the shoebox on the shelf above the stove and went back to cooking. Willa Mae watched her from across the table but did not speak. She knew something Abeni did not know yet. She was waiting for the right moment. And the right moment was coming faster than anyone expected. Then Pauline Achebe made a phone call. Pauline was the records clerk at Vanguard Crown Holdings, the same woman Willa Mae had called the night Abeni showed up on her porch. Pauline was 53 years old. She had worked in the records department for 11 years. She wore reading glasses on a beaded chain, and she kept a small pot of African violets on her desk. She was quiet, she was precise, and she had spent the last 6 weeks pulling files. Not because anyone asked her to, not because she was paid to, because she had watched Dexter Osei operate for 3 years from behind a filing cabinet, and she knew what kind of man carefully hides everything. She had seen him submit expense reports for client dinners that never happened, receipts from restaurants on nights when the buildings were closed. She had seen him bill the company for property inspections he never conducted, dates that overlapped with his golf schedule at Quail Hollow. She had found discrepancies in the maintenance budgets of 4 of the 11 buildings he managed, small amounts each time, $1,200 here, $3,400 there, a vendor payment to a company that did not seem to exist, another payment to a contractor whose address matched a P.O. box registered in Dexter's middle name. Over 3 years, the total came to $87,000. Pauline did not call Abeni. She did not call Denise Okafor Banks. She did not call a reporter or a blogger or a cousin with a loud mouth. She called the one person whose job it was to know, the internal compliance officer at Vanguard Crown Holdings. She gave him 3 file numbers and said, "You need to look at these." The audit began on a Tuesday morning. It was quiet. 2 people from the compliance team and an outside forensic accountant. They did not announce it. They did not send an email. They simply began pulling the same records Pauline had already found. Dexter did not know about it until Thursday afternoon at 4:22 p.m. when his access badge stopped working at the front door of Building 7 on North Tryon Street. He swiped it 3 times. The red light blinked each time. A security guard, a man he had walked past every morning for 4 years without learning his name, walked over and said 7 words. "Mr. Osei, you are not authorized to enter." Dexter stared at him. He swiped the badge again. The red light blinked. He looked at the security guard's face. A man named Marcus, who had opened the front door for Dexter every morning for 4 years, who had said, "Good morning, Mr. Osei," over 1,000 times, whose name Dexter had never once asked for, and saw something he had never seen there before. It was not anger, it was not pity, it was nothing. Marcus looked at him the way you look at someone who no longer exists in the system, the way Dexter had looked at Abeni on the night he turned off the porch light. That was the moment Dexter understood. Not what he had done wrong, not yet, but that something had shifted in a direction he could not control. The structures he had built, the badge access, the expense accounts, the corporate title, the leverage, were running without him now. They were running against him. By Friday, Vanguard Crown had suspended Dexter without pay, pending a full financial review. By the following Monday, his company-issued laptop, phone, and parking pass had been collected from his home by a courier who did not make small talk. By Wednesday, his attorney in the divorce case, Lawrence Kemp, withdrew representation. He did not explain why. He simply filed a notice of withdrawal with the Mecklenburg County Court and stopped returning Dexter's calls. The court hearing happened on a Thursday morning in courtroom 4B of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse on East 4th Street. Denise Okafor Banks stood at the table on the left side. Abeni sat behind her in a dress Willa Mae had ironed that morning. Dexter sat on the right side alone. He had no attorney. He had not shaved. Denise presented Abeni's folder, every receipt, every bank statement, every canceled check, every W-2, every grocery list, every payment. She laid them on the table one at a time. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. She read each item like it was a line from a hymn. $8,917 in groceries for client dinners. $14,300 in utility payments. $6,200 in car insurance, $4,500 in student loan payments, $2,100 for the first apartment deposit, $123,000 in income earned, while Dexter built his career. The judge, a man named Harold Whitfield, who had been on the bench for 22 years, reviewed the folder for 11 minutes. He turned each page slowly. He wrote notes in the margin of his legal pad. He did not look up. When he finished, he removed his glasses. He looked at Dexter, then he looked at Abeni. Then he issued his ruling. Emergency spousal support of $3,200 per month. Temporary exclusive possession of the marital home on Tuckasegee Road to Abeni, effective immediately. A restraining order requiring Dexter to vacate within 48 hours. A referral for a full forensic accounting of all marital assets and all transfers made in the previous 18 months. Dexter sat in the courtroom and did not move for 6 minutes after the ruling. His hands were flat on the table. His jaw was tight. His eyes were fixed on a point on the wall that held nothing. He did not look at Abeni. He did not look at the judge. He did not look at anyone. He had spent 14 months making sure she had nothing, and in the end, the one thing he gave her, the suitcase he packed in 10 angry minutes without checking what he was throwing in, contained the only evidence that mattered. He had handed her the receipts himself. 14 months later, on a Saturday morning in December, a restaurant opened on West Trade Street in Charlotte's West End neighborhood. It was small, 28 seats, exposed brick walls painted white on one side and left raw on the other, warm amber lighting from pendant lamps that hung low over each table, a kitchen with an open pass-through window so customers could see the food being made and smell it before it arrived. The sign above the door was carved from reclaimed wood. It said, Chidinma's Table. Abeni Ndukwe stood in that kitchen at 6:15 a.m. with her daughter strapped to her chest in a cloth carrier. The baby's name was Adaze Chidinma Ndukwe. She was 11 months old. She had her mother's eyes and her great-grandmother's name. She slept through the sound of onions hitting hot oil. The first customer walked in at 7 a.m. It was Opal Freeman. She was wearing her Sunday hat on a Saturday. She ordered the groundnut soup. She ate it slowly with a piece of bread she tore into small pieces. She did not say anything until the bowl was empty. Then she looked at Abeni and said, Chidinma would be proud, and she would tell you the soup needed 1 more minute. Abeni laughed. It was the first time she had laughed like that in 2 years. By the 3rd month, Chidinma's Table had a wait list every Friday and Saturday night. By the 6th month, the Charlotte Observer ran a full-page profile in the food section with the headline, The Recipes That Survived. By the 9th month, Abeni hired 3 cooks and a front-of-house manager named Kofi Mensah. She paid every one of them above market rate. She offered health insurance starting on day 1. She closed the restaurant every Sunday and Monday, so her staff could rest. Chidinma's standard was not just about the food, it was about the people who made it. Willamay Saunders came to the restaurant every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. She never paid. Abeni would not allow it. She sat at the same table by the front window, table 3, and ate whatever Abeni decided to cook for her that day. She never ordered from the menu. She never asked what was coming. She said the same thing every time she sat down. Surprise me, and every time, Abeni surprised her. Abeni also started a program that she ran out of the restaurant kitchen every second Saturday of the month. She called it Second Kitchen. Every month she hosted 4 women who had been displaced by divorce, by abuse, by poverty, by the kind of quiet invisibility that makes the world forget you are standing right there. She taught them to cook, not just recipes, not just techniques. She taught them Chidinma's standard. She said it the same way every time, the way her grandmother had said it to her. Nothing leaves this kitchen unless it is the best thing that person will eat this month. 3 of those women started their own catering businesses within a year. One of them, a woman named Farida Johnson, who had shown up to the first class with a black eye and a bus transfer, and a daughter who sat in the corner drawing pictures of houses she had never lived in, now supplies 3 office buildings in uptown Charlotte with weekly lunch service. She cooks groundnut soup every Thursday. She learned it in a Bainey's kitchen. She charges $18 a plate and has a waiting list. Her daughter draws pictures of their apartment now. The apartment has a kitchen with 2 windows. Another woman from the program, Tanya Rowe, started baking sweet potato pies for farmers' markets across Mecklenburg County. She told the Charlotte Observer that the first thing a Bainey taught her was not a recipe, it was a sentence. You are not starting over. You are starting from everything you already know. On the wall of Chidinma's table, next to the pass-through kitchen window, there is a framed photograph. It is black and white. It shows a woman in a white apron standing in a commercial kitchen. Her hands are on her hips. She is not smiling. She is looking directly at the camera as if to say, I was here. I did this. I fed everyone who walked through that door. Remember my name. Below the photograph, in small gold letters pressed into a brass plate, it says, Chidinma Ndukwe, 1947 to 2013. She fed everyone. She forgot no one. Dexter Ossie was terminated from Vanguard Crown Holdings after the audit confirmed $87,000 in fraudulent expense claims and fabricated vendor payments. He was not criminally charged. The company settled internally to avoid publicity, but his real estate license was suspended pending review by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. His name appeared in a public disciplinary filing. 3 former clients withdrew their business within 60 days. Cassandra Mills moved to Raleigh 2 weeks after the court ruling. She did not leave a forwarding address. She did not say goodbye. Abeni never called him. She never texted him. She never mentioned his name in the Charlotte Observer profile or in any interview that followed. She never stood in front of a camera and told the world what he did to her that night in the rain. She did not need to. The court documents spoke. The financial records spoke. The restaurant spoke every time someone sat down at a table and tasted food, made from recipes that a grandmother had left in a locker for 31 years, waiting for the right person to find them. And every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m., when Willa Mae Saunders sat at table 3 by the window, and Abeni brought her a plate and sat across from her for 3 quiet minutes, they did not always talk. Sometimes they just sat there together. 2 women, 1 table, sunlight coming through the glass. That silence said everything that needed to be said. There is a moment in every life when the world decides whether to see you or to erase you. For Abeni, that moment came in the rain, barefoot, 8 months pregnant, standing under a porch light that wasn't hers, after being thrown out of a home she built with her own hands. And for a second, the world chose to look past her. But what the world did not understand, what Dexter did not understand, is this. You can shut a door on a person. You can turn off the light. You can take their money, their name, their place in your life, but you cannot erase what they carry inside their hands. Because some people don't build their lives out of comfort. They build them out of memory, out of pain, out of everything they were forced to survive. And when those people rise, they don't just come back. They become something you can never control again. Dexter thought he left Abeni with nothing, but the truth? He left her with the one thing that would destroy him and rebuild her, her name, her skill, her truth. And the night he closed that door on her was the last moment in his life where he had power over anything, because while he was turning off the porch light, she was walking toward the life that was waiting for her, a life where she would never have to beg to be seen again, A life where people would stand in line just to taste what she creates. A life where her daughter would grow up knowing exactly who her mother is and exactly what she survived. Abenin Dukwe was never a burden. She was the foundation, and foundations don't disappear. They rise, they rebuild, and one day they become everything